Welcome to this circle. Yes, there'll be more time to talk later. Worry not. Welcome to this place we gather. Welcome to those of you who find yourselves at home. Welcome to those of you looking for spiritual home. Welcome if it's your first time, or your first time in a long time, or if you hold this space weekly. We welcome you here. There's a place for you here. There's a room in the circle for all of us. May we find a safe space to enter here into whatever time we need this morning. Whether it's a time to question or wonder, a time to express gratitude or awe, a time to grieve or express joy, or everything in between. This is a place to gather in community, and we can do all that together. We come this morning as we are, and we're welcome just that way. And we offer a special welcome this morning to Carolyn McDade, who joins her music with ours this morning, and we welcome her at the piano. It's really in gratitude for all that we are, all we have been, all we will be, that we come together in this place. We're grateful for this land, for this building, for the inheritance we share with our Treaty 6 brothers and sisters, our Métis friends, and all who call this land their ancestral and adopted homes. We move into our time together with the wisdom of our experience, with the wisdom of the ages, with the wisdom that surrounds us all, the wisdom that is in our earth and sky and everywhere. Let's gather with song.
Our
Let's join together in these words that center and gather us. We gather in this sacred time and place to listen for Earth's wisdom. Remember that Earth is our cradle. The stars and sky our blanket. The wind and the waters are breath and blood. We are together, streams in search of ocean. We are together, reading our primary scripture, our first testament, the natural world. We are together, inspired by water and soil, air and fire, inspired by an ancient love story, the story of life. We light this candle as it reminds us of our cosmic beginnings. We light it for the spark and the light and the heat that dwells deep within our earth. We light it for our star that burns, that creates warmth and makes life possible. We light this candle for our creativity and wisdom. We light this candle for the ordinariness of a flame that reminds us of so much that's extraordinary, the life within us and between us, the blessing of all. We gather in the light of the flame.
We join our prayers to the prayers of all creation, to all beings who pray in their various ways, who breathe together in this magnificent home with us. Together we offer our prayer. ever-emerging spirit in which we live. May we open to the gift and memory of being. May we receive the wisdom of earth and wind, fire and water. May we awaken to the evolutionary wisdom hidden in every element and in each creature. May we touch the deep memory carried in myth, story, legend, and song. May our relationship as Earth community teach us to live with respect and respect. May it be so. There are many ways we tell the long story of life awakening. We tell it in our myths and legends. We tell it in our poetry. We tell it in our songs and stories. I invite us to sing with one another the poetry of Carolyn McDade as we sing the long story of life finding its way in this magnificent universe, from its stirrings, telling what is the story of life as a love story.
It's our time for all ages. It's a time to come to the carpet for a story, for a talk. Anyone who's willing, small or tall, is welcome. Yeah, we are all welcome at the time for all ages. I think you should have this down.
I'll sit beside you when you start. And for you.
We have a great opportunity today to be grateful and to talk about this planet of ours called Earth. And it's really a fantastic planet. It's the only one we have. So I want to introduce you, just a second, Robert. I want to introduce you. Some of you know Sherry Ann, and some of you may not. But this is Sherry Ann, and she's going to tell us a story and then help us sing a song today. Sherry Ann, take the stump.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to you. I'm quite excited. We have an opportunity to learn and sing a song that I think helps us to slow down. And the person that wrote this song is here. Her name is Carolyn McDade. And if we all turn this way, we could all say, "Hello, Carolyn." Can you see her? Hello, Carolyn. Thank you for this song. It's an amazing song because it helps, I think, it helps me to breathe and to think about where it is that we live, that we call home. And to learn this song, we're going to share some actions that are from American Sign Language. So this first sign is home, and you know, it's got two parts to it. It's as though you're eating, so you're putting your hand to, I'm going to stand up so everybody can see. Putting your hand just beside your chin, that's the eating part. And then you bring your hand around to the side of your face, almost to your ear. That's the bed part. And they go together to create home. I didn't know that until recently. So the sign for home. Want to try that? It's quite neat. There are many ways that we call and we think about home. And one of them is that we live on this planet. And Chris described, we often call that planet Earth. Sometimes it's called Gaia with a G. And so if you were to make the letter G in American Sign Language, you stretch your first finger out and your thumb, and you can almost look through it. That's G for Gaia. Yeah, that's it. Then if you take another hand, also a G, put your wrists or hands together, and then turn Gaia around on its axis, we're kind of doing what our planet does in the cosmos, this amazing, huge universe. We also call it the cosmos, and that's the sign for cosmos. We're going to use that action too. So we've got this amazing place that is so big, and we've got Gaia. And then I'm just going to finish this little story, it's so neat. If you take your hand and imagine that you're digging very gently into soil, into the ground. And you pull your hand up, breathe it. Can you hear anything? Can you see? What do you see? Scientists tell us that there are so many living things in that handful of soil, including scientists that are part of this community. I don't know, Jim Robertson, I'm thinking of you. And bacteria are one of the things that live in this soil, and they are so tiny. And scientists say there are as many bacteria in our handful, each of our handfuls of Earth, as there are people living on Gaia. That's billions. So from the very tiny to the very big, and in between, we've got wonderful animals that live on Gaia and with Gaia, including lizards. So if you were to take the letter L, and imagine your lizard climbing up maybe a stone wall, a rock. And we've got turtles. Turtles have a body, and then they have a shell, and they've got a head that kind of peeks out. They live here too. And we need a few more actions for our song. If you were thinking about Gaia in the cosmos, you would see Gaia as this beautiful blue, green, almost like a jewel. And an action to show a precious stone jewel is like a ring on your finger, a stone on the ring. And aren't we so lucky? This is a place that we are so blessed to be part of. That's almost last sign. Blessed like that. And we're part of creation. And we get to create. So it's sending out all the good energy from your heart into Gaia and the cosmos. And the last sign is thank you. Thank you, Carolyn, for creating this song for us. Thank you. So I'd like to invite everybody just on the carpet, if you'd like to stand up. And then one of the ideas is that we just learn it, and you can help other people to learn it if they can see you. But we're just going to stand up, and we'll invite everybody else to sit so you can see the people here on the carpet. So I'd like to invite you to stand up. That's easier for you to demonstrate the signs. Great. Thank you. If there's one parable attributed to Jesus that we all know, it's this one. It's a parable that is found only in one of the 4 gospel stories we have in our Christian scriptures. In Luke's gospel, we have this story that has found its way even into our legal system with Good Samaritan laws. The story Jesus tells in answer to the question a lawyer asks. Luke chapter 10. Just then a lawyer stood up to question Jesus, and he said to him, "Teacher, what is it that I have to do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "You're the expert. What's written in the law? What do you read there?" And he answered, "You shall love the source of your life with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus answered him, "You've given the right answer.
So do this, and you'll live. But wanting to justify himself, the lawyer said to Jesus, and just who would that be? Who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered with a story. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him and beat him and went on their way, leaving him half dead. And as chance would have it, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side of the road. Similarly, a Levite, a religious expert, when he came to the place and saw him, he too passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. And he went to him, and he bandaged his wounds, and he poured oil and wine on them, and he put him on his own animal, and took him to the nearest inn, and took care of him. And the next day, when he had to leave, he gave coins to the innkeeper, and he said, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you." Jesus turned to the man who'd asked the question, and he said, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the one who fell into the hands of robbers?" And the lawyer answered, "The one who showed him compassion." And Jesus said to him, "Go and do the same." This is a quintessential story attributed to Jesus of Nazareth and passed down to us from an early Jewish Christian community. We're going to sing a little response that Chris has written for us. I want to invite you to hear the melody first, and then we'll sing it with one another. And of course, on Earth Day, we would have to hear the words of Mary Oliver. Except these are not words we are used to hearing from Mary Oliver. This is her poem, Of the Empire. We will be known as a culture that feared death and adored power, that tried to vanquish insecurity for the few and cared little for the poverty of the many. We will be known as a culture that taught and rewarded the amassing of things and spoke little about the quality of life for people, other people, for dogs, for rivers. All the world, in our eyes, they will say, was a commodity. And they will say that this structure was held together politically, which it was.
And they will say that our politics was no more than an apparatus to accommodate the feelings of the heart. And that the heart, in those days, was small and hard and full of meanness. This is the stinging critique of a contemporary poet. Do you know what lawyers and Newfoundlanders have in common? We both feature prominently in Canadian joke repertoire. One day in contracts class, a professor asked a student, "Now, if you were to give someone an orange, how would you go about that?" And the student said, "I'd say, 'Here's an orange.'" And the professor said, No, come on. Think like a lawyer." So the student thought for a moment, and then the student said, "Okay." I'd tell him, "I hereby give and convey to you all and singular my estate and interests, rights, claims, title, and advantages of and in the said orange, together with its rind and juice and pulp and seeds and all the rights and advantages, with full power to bite, cut, chew, freeze, otherwise eat the same or give the same away, with or without the pulp, juice, rind, and seeds. Anything herein before or hereinafter in any deeds or deeds, instruments, or whatever nature or kind whatsoever, to the contrary, in any ways notwithstanding." But I want you to notice that if it wasn't for a lawyer, we might not have that quintessential story of the Good Samaritan. And for some reason, Luke's community places this story as an answer to a question some keen first century legal mind asked. Not surprisingly, with one who was thinking like a lawyer, what began as a simple estate question, "What can I do to inherit eternal life?" quickly became a question focused on the law of negligence. In no time at all, it became a question for litigation. So who's my neighbor? To whom do I owe a duty of care? It's really a great question. It was a great question in the first century, and it's a great question in our global, postmodern, 21st century world. I imagine our learned friend expected a kind of concise and comprehensive definition of the word neighbor. And we can imagine that if the sandal had been on the other foot, and Jesus had asked him, "Who's my neighbor?" Thinking like a lawyer, he might have answered, "A neighbor." Well, hereinafter referred to as the party of the first part, is to be construed to mean a person of Jewish descent whose legal residence is within a radius of no more than 3 statute miles from one's own legal residence, unless there's another person of Jewish descent, hereinafter referred to the party of the second part, living closer to the party of the first part than one is oneself, in which case the party of the second part is to be construed to be the neighbor of the party of the first part, and one is oneself relieved of all responsibilities and duties that pertain to being a neighbor. But to his great surprise, the lawyer didn't get a definition, nor did he get a debate. Jesus wasn't thinking like a lawyer, he was thinking like a rabbi. So he moved the question into the world of story, and we know the story so well. We have an innocent victim who gets attacked. We have a civil leader and a religious leader, each of whom comes by and chooses not to get involved. And then we have an unlikely hero, the much feared and marginalized Samaritan who takes it upon himself to help the victim for no apparent reason. We live in an extraordinary moment on earth. We have more technical abilities than our ancestors could have imagined. Our telescopes let us see through space and time to the beginnings of the universe. And our microscopes let us pry open the complex codes at the core of life. And our satellites show us global weather patterns, and they let us spy on the hidden behaviors of remote nations. And at the same time, we are also witnesses to the destruction of life in dimensions that confronted no previous generations in recorded history. Sure, our ancestors knew war and plagues and famines. Entire civilizations disappeared when they cut down their trees for warships and they turned their land into desert. But today it's not just a forest here and farmland there, an isolated fishery off the coast of here or there. Entire species are dying. Whole cultures and ecosystems on a global scale are endangered. And sure, our climate has changed in the past. But has it ever changed at this accelerating rate? Some try to show us what's at stake when we cut down our rainforest to meet our demand for forest products. Or we strip the land to grow a crop like coffee for which we have an insatiable thirst. When we toured a distillery in Scotland a few years ago, our young guide told us that scientists are telling the industry that they will run out of peat in the next 150 years. But he tells us not to worry. There'll be plenty in our lifetime. And when toxic chemicals are used to make water bottles, we're warned not to react. Consider the jobs that are at risk if we stop manufacturing and marketing these things. Are we really to be persuaded that it's better that many be employed in our lifetime than that some be at risk of life-threatening illnesses? A recent letter in the Globe and Mail asked, seemingly in all sincerity, the writer asked, when are we going to stop focusing on what's good for places and start focusing on what's good for people? When did the interests of places become different than the interests of people? It's hard to hear, and it's difficult to see that our nearest neighbor has fallen among thieves, been stripped and beaten and left to die. And our priests choose to close their eyes, and our Levites want to satisfy their shareholders. So who will be a neighbor to a planet that has fallen among thieves? And what does it mean to be a neighbor to the third planet from the sun in our solar system? What does it mean to choose abundance for all over profit for some? What does it look like to try to create a sustainable future over being a satiated generation? And who will be the voice of the river? And who will speak for the creatures that are disappearing daily as we eliminate their habitat? And who will speak for the air? Who will show mercy to the one who has fallen victim to her own children's greed? We've established these networks in our neighborhoods to help each other be safe. We've put up these neighborhood watch signs to say that we're looking out for each other. But who's on the watch for our nearest neighbor? And what do we do when our Earth Watchers tell us the great dangers we're creating for our children and their children? Our greatest danger is not the impact on our economy of putting the feasibility of the future ahead of the greed of the present. The greatest danger is not pitting the economy with the environment. The greatest danger is not the threat to our lifestyle if we were to become responsive to the needs of our planet. Our greatest danger is that we will not do what was in the power of each of us to do. That we'll wait for governments to legislate, and we'll wait for corporate practices to change. We'll continue waiting for the priests and the Levites to do the right thing. We'll try not to see that we continue to make choices as they did on the basis of convenience and cost. The greatest danger we face is being the generation that chooses convenience over sacrifice. To be a neighbor has always meant to be inconvenienced. It's inconvenient to take public transportation. It's inconvenient to walk to the store. It's inconvenient to organize our lives in a way that we become less dependent on fossil fuel. It's inconvenient to wash dishes when we can use paper and plastic and styrofoam. It's inconvenient to take our cloth bags with us when we shop. It's inconvenient to sort recyclables and return bottles and cans for deposit, to turn off the faucet when we're lathering our hair or brushing our teeth. But that's all it is. It's just inconvenient. It's within the power of each of us to make different choices, more conscious choices. It was inconvenient for someone going from Jerusalem to Jericho to get off his animal, help an injured man, put him onto his own animal, walk into the next town. It was inconvenient to find an inn that would take an injured guest. And it was expensive to show mercy on the victim. But compassion is seldom cheap. And it costs more to buy from the farmer's market. It costs more to buy fairly traded goods. It costs more to buy earth-conscious products. But we know the economics of supply and demand. We know it'll get cheaper when more of us do it. This first century story was told to someone who would never in his wildest dreams have imagined that the neighbor would turn out to be a Samaritan. That the neighbor would be generally someone he'd have nothing to do with, someone whose religious practices and cultural practices and traditions were different from his. He would have been expected help from his own people. So maybe the power in this story is that it's still a surprise to learn who our neighbors are. And though we speak of Earth as our mother, as a near relative, do we relate to Earth as neighbor, let alone one of our own kin? Do we forget that the soil and the river and the mountain and the ocean, these are our neighbors? And our responsibilities to our neighbors extends well beyond our own species. Mary Oliver's right, in this age of corporate empires and political empires, maybe it's never been more important to be part of a neighborhood watch, to be the neighbor to the one who's fallen among thieves, the one who's being exploited and neglected and harmed, to be the alternative to that constricted, narrow, small heart of the empire. To be more than a Samaritan. That road between Jerusalem to Jericho, that wasn't something just pulled out of the head. That was a notoriously dangerous road. Of course it fit the story. And we all talk about becoming the Samaritan, but how about we fix the road? How about we make the road less dangerous? How about we make the road safer for all of us to travel on? That's what we're talking about in becoming a neighbor. Fixing the notorious dangers we're all experiencing. Not just caring for its casualties, but making the road, the place, the earth, safe for all of us. So this is a day to ask ourselves, what small habit, what minor inconvenience, what is one thing we can do to exercise our compassion for our nearest neighbor? The mystics have told us that to sing is to pray twice, and so we pray. We go to take the light of our love, of our strength, of our curiosity, of our wonder, of our quest. We go in the light of great love to be light in our world. We go taking all of who we are to be a neighbor to anyone in need, whether that one in need is part of our species, belongs to another species, is a river or a lake or a stream, or earth itself. We go as neighbors to one another.